You're watching Byline Wilmington on CBS 10 WILM. Here's your host, Don Ansell.
The District Attorney for New Hanover, Pender Counties is with us, Ben David. It's called District 5. And we're talking about some of the charges being leveled against the State Bureau of Investigation and the State Crime Lab. There have been some questions, as I mentioned before the break, about a manual that was used to train SBI agents, which instructs them on how to cooperate with prosecutors and improve those cases. It was recently suspended. What's your comments on that?
Well, first of all, it's absolutely essential that the public knows that agents are independent of prosecutors. That is, they have a function, they take an oath to serve and protect and to search for the truth. We have a duty as well. There shouldn't be any suggestion that a certain result is desired by prosecutors or by agents other than getting to the truth. Hopefully what we are doing when we work closely with them, which we should, is at an early stage of an investigation, direct them towards key pieces of evidence that we believe might lead to discoverable information about the perpetrator of a crime, for instance. When a 95-year-old woman, for instance, is brutally raped in her own home and we have nothing to go on, and we can take the bed sheets, we can tape the rape kit, and I am literally at the crime lab the next morning when it opens up and says, can you expedite testing? And we capture that person within 10 days.
Why did they suspend that manual if it's not the way it should be?
Because we're trying to avoid even the appearance of impropriety. It's essential that the lab be perceived as independent of any influence by anybody with an agenda. And that's I think, the manipulation that's going on over this issue. Let's be clear. It is emphatically not the job of prosecutors to obtain a conviction at all cost, or agents. It's our duty and oath to search for the truth. And if the truth means you have the wrong person, they're innocent, we should be the first in line to say, let them go. And if they are absolutely guilty, we are going to fight with every fiber in our body to make those convictions.
You're saying we are, you mean a district attorney.
District attorney.
We're talking about the SBI, and
Right.
you say you're separate and independent.
We are. But the lab is not independent, and that's a raging controversy right now. The lab is under the auspices of the Attorney General, and even though the DAs and Attorney General don't have the same offices, we have the same prosecutorial function. So the issue now is whether or not they're, like in other states, going to be independent of the Attorney General's office, or whether they're going to stay there the way they've been for years.
The recent reports indicate that 10 SBI agents and crime analysts from the crime lab are being investigated for tailoring their investigations to please prosecutors as opposing to pursuing a case in an impartial way. Do you think that those are all bogus?
No, I'd like to look at the facts of those cases. Fortunately, I don't believe any of those cases occurred within my district. If they had, I would be right there meeting with the Attorney General's office and the lab director, Mr. McLeod, who's the interim director, and said, let's get to the bottom of this, just as I'm confident the district attorneys affected in those cases are doing. What we want to make sure, though, is that these allegations don't take on truth without more facts. Let's take a look at them.
Talking about facts, a recent government-mandated inquest reported that SBI agents over a 16-year period, this is a government-sanctioned report,
that we helped call for at the
repeatedly
conference of
helped
DAs.
prosecutors net convictions by misrepresenting blood evidence, and keeping critical notes from defense attorneys.
Well, there's two things on that. When you talk about keeping critical notes from the defense attorneys, let's be very clear on our obligations. After the Duke Lacrosse case, the entire law changed. The open file discovery means that they get every shred of evidence. Back in 1995 and prior to that, the cases that all got pushed back to the local levels that you're referring to, that was not the law of North Carolina. The law has always been, constitutionally, due process, 5th and 14th Amendments, that they're entitled to any exculpatory evidence. That is, evidence that might aid them in claiming innocence, for instance. Right. Prosecutors, agents have always had that duty. The evidence that has been brought forward in these 200 cases that are now being fully analyzed frequently dealt with interim testing that led to ultimate results. So if any of that is Brady material or exculpatory, that's a constitutional issue. It wasn't violating the open file law back then because there was no law on the books with respect to that. Let me be clear on this, Don. We are not advocating that anyone is above the law or should be breaking it in the name of getting a conviction. We're outraged and horrified by that suggestion, and if that has occurred, we need to take a hard look as a justice system at that. What we're saying is it's very easy to start bandying around things as allegations or truth, or to start talking about whether the law was violated when it wasn't even a law in the books back in 1995.
When you say bandying about, discussion is what it's about,
yes.
And if you don't talk about it, it doesn't surface. So
no, listen, and healthy public dialogue is good, and that's why I'm here today. What I'm talking about is when we're making charges, when we're making allegations in a courtroom.
Who's we're?
When the state of North Carolina, through agents and prosecutors, we back that up with evidence and facts. I don't want to speculate on any case that's pending or any case that's been resolved without knowing the facts or knowing all the evidence. And if that is in fact the case, that any evidence was manipulated, any testimony was altered, any stuff was hidden, we need to deal with that honestly as a court system. That's what I'm saying.
Are things like this to be expected in a judicial system where there's a competitive nature to attorneys to win a case?
We're in an adversarial system, Don.
Yeah.
We're also in a system of human beings who are who make mistakes and are imperfect. Having said that, we have a duty to the best of our abilities to uphold that oath that says we're not about convictions, we're about searching for the truth. I have stood up before in the middle of a closing argument and said, find this person not guilty. I have dismissed murder cases before. I have looked at cases and said, you know what, we've got the wrong person. If we have any of that going on here, then we as the prosecutors need to deal with that. We're the ones that are doing that.
Do you think the public has a Pollyanna way of looking at justice and the reality of how it works?
Actually, I think it's reversed. I think that people are getting very cynical about the justice system and skeptical in light of some of the things that our state has had to endure. And that's why it is so important right now that the right people are taking the lead on this thing. Let me emphatically say this. I appreciate the professionalism of the defense attorneys, and I thank them for the results that they've brought to light. It is the job of prosecutors to search for the truth and search for justice. That's our oath. We're the ones that are going to take the lead on this. And if you've seen the Conference of DAs, we've been doing that. I applaud Attorney General Cooper for calling for this audit. He told us about it months ago, and we joined with him in doing it. We want to do more, not less. We want to ensure the integrity of the system. We know that juries rely on this evidence for convictions. We're trying to ensure the sanctity of that process.
All right, we're going to take another break. When we come back, we'll talk about a statement that a former director of the SBI made under oath. Stay with us.